We go from having a field of major contenders to having a field of something else for this weekend in the Corrales Punta Cana Resort and Club Championship. It's going to be an interesting one for sure because don't really know a whole lot about all these golfers. We obviously have data on them, and we shall see how things play out. But it's a very different view than we had last week for the U.S. Open. So let's dive on in and break it down. Welcome on in to the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gdula. He is the managing editor for numberFire. Brandon, Bryson DeChambeau winning the U.S. Open pretty comfortably. How you doing?
Not great.
Sorry for your Matthew Wolff ticket. Did you at least pair it with a top 5 bet? Or no?
No, each way.
No.
Yeah. I also was in on Patrick Reed, which, if the course, the course just didn't really play as we all thought. And What?
Who was on the podcast advocating for a distance stack and said they would include Bryson DeChambeau, Rory McIlroy, and Matthew Wolff in that lineup, and had all three finish top 10.
It wasn't me.
It was me. Come on, man.
Well,
not all of us misdiagnosed the course. Come on, man.
Yeah,
I don't get things right very often, so I have to let it be known the rare times it does happen.
Yeah. Well, it didn't play the way that I thought it was going to play because it was just shoved in our faces how tough it would be. And
only one person was under par. I'm pretty sure that's tough.
But the way that it was tough, it didn't matter. All that mattered was length, and that's not really what we were told. But until they change the golf ball, it's going to probably be that way. So I guess I should probably just pick the longest guys in this field, which there are a few. A lot of these Korn Ferry Tour guys are super long. But you mentioned that we don't have any major contenders here. I think really the only difference is that this isn't a major. So it's the same. It's the same. These are all great golfers.
Oh yeah.
But I guess technically we had one major contender in Will Zalatoris.
And he is the favorite.
Yeah.
He is 11-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook, so that should tell you the field strength here. It'll be a very interesting one. We're going to dive on in and break down the Corrales Punta Cana in just 1 second. But first, make sure you get yourself entered in the Week 3 FanDuel Sunday Million, because for just $4.44, you're giving yourself a shot at a $1 million first place prize. Again, $4.44 to get entered to the Sunday Million contest. It's $1 million to first place, $2.75 million in total prizes. We've got Russell Wilson, Zeke Elliott, and under salary Jonathan Taylor, all in this player pool for this week. So make sure you go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today to get yourself entered for the Week 3 Sunday Million. Eligibility restrictions apply. We also have our Listener League for Week 3 already posted. If you are a Heat Check NFL listener, go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league, FanDuel.com/league/listener league to get yourself entered for that. There's also a link to it in the Week 2 recap post over on numberFire.com for the podcast. The Week 2 recap podcast is posted. Brandon and I broke down all the big injuries, unfortunately, and talked about some players who got significant role changes in Week 2 as well. So, big recap podcast posted on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. The Corrales Punta Cana Resort and Club Championship is at the Punta Cana Resort and Club. It is 7,666 yards. It is a par 72. There are more than 130 golfers in the field for this week, and the regular cut rules apply, so the top 65 plus ties will make it after the first 2 rounds. So once again, cuts will matter quite a bit for this weekend. They've been to this course 4 times total between the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour. The PGA Tour stops were in March of 2019 and then in 2018 as well. So if you're looking for data, you can turn to those. You can also look at some Korn Ferry Tour stats. Unfortunately, no shot link, so we can't look at that. But Brandon, when you look at this course, what stands out to you as being things we should emphasize?
Well, with no strokes gained data, it's always tough. It's really become a vital piece of breaking down golf events. But even without that, we do have 4 years of data, really 2 years at least, on the PGA Tour should tell us enough of what to expect. The bigger issue is that we don't really know a lot about this field. I know we have PGA Tour data on, I won't say like just 10 of these guys or anything like that, but the samples we can trust, they're a little tricky. So I think figuring out the field is even harder than figuring out the course itself. The course does play easy compared to, average compared to par. The past 2 winners have been 18 under par each on the PGA Tour. So you're going to have to score. No clear data jumped out to me with distance versus accuracy. Good drive rate kind of popped as relevant. So I'm just going to do the smart thing here, I think, and use strokes gained off the tee. And if you're wondering which samples to trust with these guys, again, it's tough because the Korn Ferry Tour players don't have strokes gained data. The PGA Tour guys in this field generally play weak events, so you can probably rely on that. But I'm looking at strokes gained off the tee, and if you want to figure out whether the Korn Ferry Tour guys can do that, look at total driving, which ranks distance and accuracy. It's a pretty good proxy, honestly, long term for strokes gained off the tee. Approach play is going to matter. So strokes gained approach, or if you're looking for some of the lesser knowns, look at greens and regulation. I'm downplaying around the green numbers because I need scoring, and that's not really the recipe for scoring a lot of birdies. We'll be looking at putting. It is a rare surface. Every time this comes up, there's a pronunciation issue. I watched a few YouTube videos of professors. Some say paspalum, some say paspalum. Jim, I think, prefers paspalum. But because it's a rare surface, I'm just overlooking it, and I'm looking at just strokes gained putting. So I'm kind of, all that to be said, I'm looking at a pretty narrow window of stats: strokes gained approach, strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained putting, and birdies gained.
I am looking at distance just because the length of the course is so long.
Why not? Distance matters everywhere. It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So if you don't have distance, get out of my lineup, brah. You were right about good drive rate popping back in 2018. That year, if you look at the median ranks for golfers who finished well, among those who had enough data to qualify for the full PGA Tour season stats, the median rank in driving distance was 61.5. The median rank in accuracy was 104th. And the median rank in good driver is 56th. So what I'm doing this week is I'm actually kind of giving a double check. I have both distance and strokes gained off the tee because I think that the way that I'm viewing this is I want some distance, but I also want better overall golfers. And I think that if we look at strokes gained off the tee, look at strokes gained approach, and overall strokes gained putting, I'm going to get a good idea of who are the better golfers overall in this field, and that should help me there. But then I can factor in distance as well as being not necessarily like an ancillary stat, but kind of like an add-on, I guess, is the way that I view it. I'm not going to omit golfers who are not good with their distance if they're good off the tee. If they have good numbers overall at the tee. If they can make up for the lack of distance, I will still consider them, but I will consider it a bonus if someone gets distance. Do you think that is a fair way to view things?
That's always fair. I mean, really, if you want to boil everything down, all of the strokes gained areas are important. Around the green is historically the least important, followed by off the tee as being least important. Events are just decided by irons and putting almost always. But it's, to answer your question, if you find golfers who gain strokes off the tee and with their irons and can putt and are long, you're going to have probably a good track record of rostering those guys in DFS.
Yes, that tends to grade out pretty well. So we shall see how things play out for this week. But I do think that, again, distance is something I want to emphasize again. And I think that's something that could be key here, Brandon, is looking at past trips to Corrales Puntacana, because it is always kind of a weird event. Usually it's a split event. It will be happening while there is, or it's the 2 times it's been on the PGA Tour, it's been a secondary event where there was, I think, a match play going on. So we had FanDuel contests. We can look back at optimals of that. And it's also a similar type of field strength. So when you look back at past events here, what has stood out to you as being unique from a roster construction perspective?
Yeah, I don't always like to look at golf optimals because they rely on outlier performances, but with a field like this where it's like you look at the top of the field and nobody feels like you have to play them, maybe Zalatoris, but other than that, it's a lot of unknowns. So I just kind of wanted to see if anything stood out, and I think something did. Last year's optimal totaled 53,700, so a lot of salary left on the table. The total draft percentage, if you just sum up everyone's draft percentage in the lineup, was 44.8%. Just 2 golfers above 5% and 3 below 1%. Only 1 golfer had a salary of at least 10,000. That was Graham McDowell, who won. 3 were in the mid or the low 9s. There was a mid 8 and a mid 7. And in 2018, it was a similar story. The total spent was 54,100. So a lot of salary left on the table. There were 2 golfers with salaries in the 10,000 range, but still none in the 11s. So in neither of the past 2 optimals has there been a golfer, with a salary of 11,000 or more. Just kind of like a balanced lineup. You have to hit on the right $7,000 golfer who erupts, but again, that's an optimal construction, and you don't need the optimal to have a good lineup. And you don't need to chase $7,000 golfers in a field like this. What I think this says is with the salary being left on the table, salary is kind of irrelevant this week because there's not a huge difference between golfers in the 11,000 range and the 10 or even maybe upper 9s. So hone in on the guys you like the best. I think I'm always swayed by salaries. I'm going to try not to do that this week. And also, no golfer in the optimal was on more than 21% of lineups. So it's probably a really big game theory week where you avoid the chalk.
Unpredictable week, and that means we should be more willing to deviate from what will be popular. I have FanShare pulled up now so we can kind of get a read on what may be popular throughout that. We will discuss that throughout the podcast today, but I think that what you said is that stood out most to me is that salaries don't matter, and I think that's the right way to view it, at least to me, based on like when I was looking at the salaries, like a lot of them just like kind of, I don't know, they're very strange, I think. Yeah.
Golfers have to be priced, like they have to be priced the way that they are in a typical PGA field.
Right.
So is Sam Burns really worth a salary of 11.6?
Might be.
Maybe. I like Sam Burns, but is he that much better than Adam Shank?
Maybe. We're going to talk about both those guys. So let's dive into past history here at the Corrales Puntacana. And again, we only have two PGA Tour events here, but we do have some Korn Ferry Tour data we can look at as well. One of the past winners of this event is Bryce Garnett. He got that done back in 2018. He checks in at $9,600. Brandon, of course, again, no shot link data. But what did you learn from digging into what Garnett did there?
Yeah, so he won in 2018, and I did go back and compile the 2 Korn Ferry Tour or then Webb.com Tour events. He missed the cut at the Korn Ferry Tour in 2017, shooting a 73, 67, but came back and shot a 63, 68, 69, 70 to win in 2018. I was 39th here in 2019 with all 4 rounds between a 69 and a 71. So pretty good course knowledge, pretty extensive course knowledge relative to a lot of these other golfers here. He kicked off 2021 with a 67th at the Safeway, losing strokes tee to green in every facet, which is always a bad sign. But one event isn't really something we should look at. We should look at a larger sample. Prior to that, he was cut at the Northern Trust and the Wyndham, and in total has missed 5 of his past 8 cuts. So the little bit longer term is not necessarily promising, but when he does make the cut, he's had some good finishes. 26th at the 3M Open, 17th at the RBC Heritage. And he's kind of a really neutral golfer in every area. If you look at the long-term data, that kind of makes him viable in a field like this. The salary is definitely in play at 9,600. Despite all the missed cuts, he is 39th in total strokes gained average since the restart. among guys in the field. He is 22nd off the tee, 32nd in approach. Kind of an all-or-nothing play. Can you get behind Bryce Garnett?
I think my concern is that in a field where people may not know all the names, I could see people leaning more, or like I think there's always a bump for past winners. I could see that bump being increased with this being kind of a wonky field. That would be concerning, especially because like Garnett's profile is fine, but it doesn't stand out to me, I guess. He is at the bottom of a tier that I like a lot, and I would like to not be in the range directly beneath it. So if I need to use Garnett in order to avoid like the low 9,000 range, I might do that. But he's not a priority to me, and like I don't think I will probably wind up using him. Again, he's not like an off the radar play. Like he's not someone that he's like I think is a bad play. Just not a play who really fits what I want, because I do think that the high 9,000 range is pretty solid. So I think that's why I probably won't get to Garnett. What about you?
Yeah, I'm not really chasing the past winner narrative. I don't love the form. That said, he is kind of balanced, and that always draws my attention in a field with a lot of uncertainty, because we don't know maybe what will win out, and we don't know, obviously, what kind of, if the short game comes and goes. I mean, if his short game's bad, he could make up for it with the ball striking. It's kind of why I like Xander Schauffele a lot. Just being like, it's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but guys who can bail themselves out with bad short game, or if the irons aren't on, they can get away with it because of a great short game. I am not out on Garnett, but I do prefer golfers right above him and a few right below him in salary. So he's not particularly standing out. And if he does wind up being a little popular, I'm fine. I'll put it this way. Aside from probably Will Zalatoris, I'm fine fading every golfer I think will be on like 25% of lineups this week.
I think that's the right way to view things, and I'd be on board with that as well. I think going back to what you mentioned about the balance, like having multiple paths to scoring well is valuable, and like that's why, like you said, like Xander's super interesting always. But I think that is valuable to me too, so I agree with that. My first guy is Adam Shank. You talked about him before, and if you compare salaries to odds, which is something you can do at times, Shank looks like a pretty terrible play. He's 45-1 at 10-7, which is not great, but he's been pretty interesting at this course in the past. Back in 2018, Shank actually led the field in greens and regulation gained. He was at 13.3. Nobody else had more than 10.3. The 2019 performance was not as good, but it was another look at the course. He finished in the top 40 there again. So not a lot of guys have relevant data here, and Shank had a week where he went kind of nuts, and I think I'd assume just didn't putt very well. Shank is 11th in strokes gained off the tee, 38th in approach, and over the past 50 rounds, he's 20th in putting the past 100. So the stats aren't bad. So is Adam Shank on your list this week or no?
I am leaning toward betting Adam Shank to win outright.
Okay.
You mentioned the two. Sorry, you mentioned the two finishes on the PGA Tour. He also played here both years when it was on the Webb.com tour. It was 12th in 2017, 41st in 2016. So he's got 16 rounds at this course, which I don't always care about, but whenever it's good play, and I am fine with the stats profile. He is, 10th off the tee, top 50, at least in approach and putting. Again, that's a pretty all-around profile for me. I am still considering betting Adam Shank, so I have to say that I like him on FanDuel for sure.
Yeah, I think that he's interesting. I was expecting, because the betting odds were so long, that he would be like someone people wouldn't be on. But he's actually he's got some tags on FanShare that's very early. Like there aren't a lot of tags overall. But I will say that he has some, which is interesting because I didn't expect that to happen. It may just be kind of playing the course history angle, but I think that's interesting. I would guess.
Yeah, he's got the little flame
on the
fire
for his. I thought that was current form.
Oh
no.
Yeah, they don't have any. Yeah,
current form course history, right?
I thought it was course fit.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
But it's probably current form though. Honestly,
I have no idea.
Just forget
regardless. Regardless, I think that I think he's interesting. I think there are a couple of guys who have betting odds that are not in line with their salaries who I would be very interested in being in on if people were going to be off of them as a result of that. Luke List is the other, of course. But I think that I'd rather have List over Shank, but Shank is someone I'm very closely monitoring, I would say, as of right now. Let's move to Seamus.
You want to bet?
Shank versus who?
List.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll bet List versus anyone. I'll bet List versus the field this week, straight up.
List versus Zalatoris.
No.
Okay. Love that logic, though. That's good stuff.
Will Zalatoris is in the field. Will Zalatoris is above the field. Levitating. Okay, so it's FanDuel points List versus Shank. I have List, you have Shank, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How did last week's bets go, by the way? I forgot what we had.
I'm not actually look it up.
I'm not actually being a troll. I actually don't remember.
I'm pretty sure you won every bet we made.
Okay, good. I didn't win the bobblehead, so it doesn't matter. But
you had Peters over Munoz, and you had JT over Rom.
I mean, you just don't bet against Thomas Peters. If Thomas Peters were in the field, he would be minus 120 to win. Let's talk about Seamus Power, Brandon. $8,200 does have experience here, both in the PGA Tour and the Korn Ferry Tour. What do you see with his profile at this course?
Yeah, 7th year at the Korn Ferry Tour setup in 2016 with 266s and 269s. In 2018 on the PGA Tour, he was 5th and then finished 44th a year ago. So if you value the Korn Ferry Tour setup, which probably not substantially different from this field, that gives him 2 top 7s, 3 made cuts, some of the best course form in the field. Problematically, the current form just not really bankable long term. He was cut at the Safeway, 27th at the Wyndham, 9th at the Barracuda, which is definitely a similar field to this one. At 8,200, I don't care that he's a low salaried pick. I'm not really factoring in salaries. Obviously, I have to, adhere to the salary cap. And he can gain strokes off the tee. The iron's pretty neutral for a field like this. So I don't think I'm making Power a core play, but I do like him enough to put him in my rotational pool of golfers.
Yeah, he has distance and he can putt, which is a really valuable combination. So I think that's interesting. The problem is he doesn't do a lot with the distance. There's a pretty big gap between his distance rank and his strokes gained off the tee rank. So that's a little bit concerning. The approach play, as you mentioned, is kind of middling for this field. So I agree where he's someone I'll probably wind up using, but I can't make him a priority necessarily just because it's kind of an uninspiring profile. So I think that's why I'm probably not in on Power all that much. I want to dig more into the recent stuff to see if he's been making gains in his approach. But I think overall, he's in play. But I think there are guys below 9,000 I like more than him. And I think that's the way you sound with this too, right?
Yeah, he's not my favorite play below 9,000. But he's viable. My favorite play below 9,000 is your next golfer.
Okay, so let's talk about Keith Mitchell because I want some oomph off the tee. I want some giddy up. We know that Keith Mitchell can provide that. He used that to finish second at the Corrales Puntacana back in 2018. Mitchell was second in the field in greens and regulation gain behind the aforementioned Adam Shank. And his distance did seem to give him a pretty legitimate boost relative to the field. Mitchell's a bad putter. We know that. The approach play hasn't been good recently by any means, but we know he can bomb it. Is that enough for you to take a swing at him at $8,900?
It is. He's going to gain strokes off the tee. We know that. I feel like he can gain strokes with the irons, and then the putting, always a huge concern. But if you look back through his, tournament log, he's got those spike weeks with putting. He's also got the ice cold weeks. So reading backwards, his strokes gained putting numbers and some of these include missed cuts. So they can seem like they pile up, but minus 1.9 most recently. Then behind that, minus 3.4 in 2 rounds, minus 1.6, minus 0.7, plus 4.1, plus 0.7, plus 5.2. He's also got another plus 6.3 back at the Arnold Palmer when he finished 5th. So I'm almost guaranteed strokes gained off the tee. The irons could be there. And then if the putter's there too, I mean, just basically what that sums up to is long term, he's just a better golfer than the salary indicates. So I would be kind of hurting myself if I just overlooked it because I was worried about the putting.
Yeah, and if I do want to play a distance angle, like Mitchell's kind of one of the guys who just fits that super well, and I think that I can justify it beyond that with the spike weeks he can have, and like he can have decent weeks of the approach too. So like he's going to gain strokes off the tee. That's like a baked in known. If he can just be okay elsewhere, that could be enough $800-900. So I think that Mitchell deserves to be on the list and someone I am willing to use this week. Not again, probably not. I might be a bit lower on him than you if you said he's your favorite below 9,000, but I'm very on board with him and someone I will use. Power or Mitchell for you, considering salary?
Mitchell.
I agree. Let's move into the current form discussion, and we have to start here with Will Zalatoris because we talked about him last week. He paid off in a pretty major way, and now he goes to a field where he is the favorite. I don't think that's off base. So let's talk about Will Zalatoris and how we're handling him in this field this week.
Yeah, I think there's one question this week, and it's, are you playing Zalatoris or are you fading him? I think you can make the case that coming off of the U.S. Open, he might just kind of have a letdown, which I can understand. But from a process standpoint, it's really hard not to like him. As you mentioned, we talked about Zalatoris last week in the current form section. And if you didn't listen to the U.S. Open pod but are listening to the Corrales Puntacana pod, I would love to hear what happened. Like what's going on. But
they only come for the big field.
Zalatoris was T6 at Winged Foot last week, and he did so by gaining strokes in every facet, including leading the field in strokes gained approach. In that field, at that course, which that's insane. He was also 17th in strokes gained off the tee. He launches it. He's 11-8 on FanDuel. He's, I would assume, odds on to be 40% rostered at least. I think he's a lock to be the most popular golfer in the field because he is the betting favorite as well. That almost always means you're the most popular golfer on FanDuel. That said, there are no certainties this week. There is potentially a letdown spot for Zalatoris, but I think I'm going to be significantly overweight on Zalatoris and just hope that he doesn't show up completely burned out from Winged Foot.
Yeah, I think that there are different ways to view this. I think that I am on board with you where I am okay going overweight just because I think like if you're viewing this from I talk about this a lot in the baseball podcast. Like if we're viewing this from a talent perspective, there's a gap. And I am more willing to swallow chalk when there is a gap in talent than in other situations. And I think there is that gap for Zalatoris. So I'm more on board with you where I am inclined to be overweight. However, if your process says I can't go anyone who's going to be popular, or if you just for whatever reason don't want to use Zalatoris, you're worried about the letdown coming off of such a big event, you have pivots. We're going to talk about a couple of them, and I think that they are not that bad, honestly. So I would say you can play it however your process says. If your process says, I believe in Zalatoris, I'm going to use him, great. I agree with you. That's the way I'm going to play things. But we're going to talk about a couple of guys who could be potential pivots, and I think that they are viable pivots. And golfers, I actually think, are fair. So that's the way that I'd put it. You can kind of play things how you want here. My process says swallow that shock, baby. But I think it depends on your process too. And it's weird because usually your process is avoid the chalk, but I'm guessing it's because you view him as being in his own tier, right?
Yeah, this is like a light version of when Justin Thomas plays and there's nobody else.
Right.
And you just are like, I'm going to play Justin Thomas if he misses the cut, which he did at the Sony. It's whatever. There are viable pivots, but only from a game theory standpoint. I don't see process-based pivots.
Yeah.
Last week, perfect example, like Bryson DeChambeau was a process-based pivot off of any number of chalky golfers. This is not quite the same for me. So
right, because like Bryson's in the same tier as DJ, Rory, or whoever else, and Rahm and all those guys.
Yeah.
Whereas these guys probably aren't in the same tier as Zalatoris.
No, I have Zalatoris, long-term adjusted form, about 0.54 strokes better than the next closest golfer, and that's Corey Connors, which, if you think about that, like a half a stroke per round is substantial.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to get away from Zalatoris, even if he's chalky, which he will be.
Okay, so let's talk about some other options here in this field based on their current form. Starting with Christopher Ventura. Ventura splitting time between the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour, and he was in a really bad place before the COVID layoff. Like, he missed a ton of cuts, but looked like a new player ever since. Actually had one event before the COVID layoff where he popped, and then has carried that over since the layoff. In 4 Korn Ferry Tour events since the layoff, Ventura has 2 top 10s and 3 top 15s. But he showed up on the PGA Tour, too. He was 21st at the Rocket Mortgage, 37th at the Wyndham, 7th at the Safeway. He had a miscut at the 3M Open in there. Ventura's shown good distance. The putting's been good. The only lingering question here is the approach play for Ventura. Ventura doesn't have a lot of wiggle room for question marks at 10-6. So, Brandon, do you think the approach is a big enough concern where you are crossing off Ventura despite the fact he does kind of do things elsewhere?
I think so. That's the most important stat for me. And he's been finishing well, obviously. The form has been rather good, but that almost is despite the approach play. And I just can't really bank on short game to carry you. I'm not looking for short game in terms of around the green play as much this week. So with viable, this is a better example for me. There are viable pivots off of Ventura at that salary, specifically Adam Shank, Sepp Straka. I would say those are the two that jump out to me most.
Why hating Luke List? Come on. So I would say
I don't even put him in that range.
So I think it's what?
Well, it's 400. I mean,
Shank's,
I figured List was like part of the 11,000 range.
He's an elite golfer. Yeah, I'll go with that. But like, you know, we can include him here. It's $400. I would agree with you, despite the fact
Lucas
that
doesn't win this week. I can't ever use him again. I don't think
he won in June. He can win again.
He has to win this week, or
he's
else
going to. It's what do you mean hypothetical? Why is this a hypothetical when it's a guarantee? What has ever gone wrong with guaranteeing a Luke List victory? Like
so many things.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong. But yeah, I think that I'd rather have List. I'd rather have Shank than Ventura straight up, and they have longer betting odds too. So I'd bet that like they don't wind up being all that popular. Ventura actually is getting a lot of sentiment, positive sentiment on FanShare. So I'm very okay going with List and Shank over Ventura for this week. Let's move on to your second current form golfer, Brandon. That is Chris Baker at $9,500. What have you seen with him recently? And is he someone you can trust in a tier that I hate this week?
He's coming off a missed cut, which usually disqualifies someone from current form, but I don't think it does in a field like this. And there's just more to current form than the past event. But at the Safeway, when he missed the cut, he gained 1.5 strokes tee to green, lost 0.8 putting for a pretty lackluster but pretty sort of average performance. And if you miss the cut near the number, I'm okay with it. It happens. Prior to that, he made 6 straight cuts and did so from gaining strokes off the tee in 5 of them and from approach in all 6. That includes 4.3 and 6.5 strokes gained from approach at the Wyndham and the 3M Open. Pretty spiky weeks. Only Henrik Norlander has gained more strokes from approach play since the restart than Baker has among the field. You mentioned it's not a great tier. It really does start to drop off with a whole lot of question marks, but I'm swinging for the fences. I don't think there's anything resembling a floor for any of these golfers. So Baker at 95 is someone I will have in my like tournament pool.
Yeah, I think that's
this field, man.
Very committal. Very committal. Is committal a word? I think it's a word. Yeah, I think that Baker works because he kind of fits what I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast, where I am valuing distance, but I'm not going to omit guys who don't have distance if they do well off the tee. And Baker, 32nd in strokes gained off the tee in this field, despite not being all that long. Like you said, the approach play has been very good. I kind of think that like he is pretty solid relative to that tier, but I think what I'd rather do is just avoid that tier. Like if it means going down to the 8,000 range or the 7,000 range in order to avoid that range, get back up to the guys around 97 and 98, I'd probably rather do that. But I think that if I had 9,500 on the table, I might wind up using Baker, but I think I'd rather just try to reconfigure to give myself $300 to get back up to 98 or so. Does that make sense?
It does.
Very expansive answer.
I mean, it does. The salaries don't matter this week.
All right. Speaking of salaries not mattering, let's talk about someone who is the minimum. It's Joo Young Kim. His salary is minimum, but he's 80-1 to win. And that kind of gets my attention at least. Kim has been tearing it up internationally. He has played 9 events since January 1st, and he has a win and 4 top 5s in that time. Kim's 2 events in the PGA Tour haven't been quite as dazzling. Missed the cut at the PGA Championship. He was 67th at the Safeway Open. But that's just 2 events. You tend to have a better read than I do on guys who play different tours. He's played on the Australian Tour. He's played on the Korean Tour. He's played the Asian Tour. He's been everywhere. So what do those numbers tell you about Joo Young Kim?
The reason I know for the most part is relying on Data Golf. They track a lot of this stuff. They adjust for fields, and there's not a lot of actual strokes gained data. In terms of the more granular stats, off the tee approach, etc. But he's got good finishes. Some of them sort of matter. Overall, what I'm getting at is he's 116th in the world golf, official world golf rankings, which I think a lot of people rely on a lot, which I don't think is definitely, it's not a terrible place to look, but Data Golf has rankings as well, and he's 287th there. I would assume that people like, Kim from having him play at the PGA. And honestly, I think I'm just I think he's the best play in the 7,000 range, but overall, I'm not particularly enticed to play him.
I don't know how much talk he's going to get. He has 2 tags on Fanshare now. I don't know if that's going to be enough to drive popularity. So I think that if I can get a dude who actually is fairly 287th in the Data Golf World Golf Rankings, do you have where that ranks in this field?
No.
Okay. I think that'd be very interesting because I know that there are guys I think Thomas Dietrich's in the top 100 in Data Golf's World Golf Rankings, but there aren't a lot who are top 100 type guys. So I actually don't view 287th as being a huge negative in this field.
What I'm saying is I think he's not as good as the world golf rankings imply he is. And if people see that he's 116th, they might say minimum salary, 116th in the world, I'm going to play him. And I don't want anyone who's chalky. All that said, I
don't know if he will be chalky.
Well, I mean, I would assume Fanshare is doing a great job, but I don't know if they're looking for Tom Kim as well. That's a whole sort of thing for the PGA.
Do you want to make a bet on roster rate for Kim?
Not really, no. But what number are you thinking?
10%, and I go under.
I don't even know how many golfers are going to be 10% because it's so. But I would assume if any golfer below 8,500 is, I would assume he's the most popular.
But he might not be 10%.
Okay. I mean, look, he's not okay. So you're going to use Kim in our head-to-head.
I didn't say that.
No, you're gonna.
No, I'm not.
I will then.
I'm using Zalatoris. I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, that much is certain. It's going to be at least a 5-on-5 at best.
Yeah.
For our head-to-head. But look, I think like anytime you can get someone viable at 7,000, it's worth noting. I just have a hard time believing someone at 80-1 and minimum salary is not going to be like close to 20%.
Well, then bet it, brah. I gave you a bet on the table.
Fine.
All right. I have. Do you want to do the Eagle contest? What's the big one this week? What's it called? Or do you just want to do all of FanDuel? Because you get those numbers on Monday.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So once they go up on numberFire, we will know that I win, and I will victory lap for days. Because
I know I did not doubt the victory lapping, but if I win, we will not discuss it.
Do you have our snake draft results on your sheet as well? Because I forgot who won that the past 2 weeks too.
Did you win that one?
Yeah, of course.
I had Aaron Jones.
I think you were second. I know. Yeah, the best. Come on. Let's take a look at what the bookmakers are saying about this weird field. Fresh off making the cut and pushing at the U.S. Open, Will Zalatoris 11-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. He is a favorite, followed by Corey Connors and Mackenzie Hughes at 14-1. Sam Burns is 16-1. Then it dips down to Adam Long at 20-1. Liliano Grillo and Henrik Stenson are 22-1. Stenson he's fallen a bit. Charles Howell III and Thomas Dietrich are 27-1. Denny McCarthy is 29, and then Christopher Ventura rounds up the top group at 34-1. Brandon, we have Zalatoris at the top. Who is number 2 for you in this field? If you had to name a number 2.
Said I have to?
Yeah, you have to.
And we're talking FanDuel, not betting.
Correct.
I'm going to go Adam Long.
Okay, sell me on Adam Long.
Well, I'll sell you on him later.
Okay, I guess we can leave it for that then.
Sell you on him now too. He's just, I guess, good for relative to the field. I don't like his betting odds, but he's 25th in strokes gained tee to green using the past 50 rounds, but also narrowing that down to the past calendar year on the PGA Tour, because I'm sure a lot of these golfers, and they do have like longer term information on Fantasy Nationals that I don't really want to look at. 12th in putting over a full 50 rounds as well. No other golfers top 25 in each. So again, 12th in putting, 25th in strokes gained tee to green, and nobody else is that good in each over the past year. So I think Long is my second favorite high salaried FanDuel play.
I'd probably go Zalatoris.
Yeah. I'd put him number 1 too.
I'll go Sam Burns. I know you were talking that trash about him earlier, but I do think that like if I were ranking things straight up, I would go Sam Burns.
He's an other to consider for me in my column, so
okay, fair enough. But he has a distance that I like. He's good off the tee. He can putt. He's not a disaster with his irons. That's a plus. So I'd put Burns number 2 because I am valuing distance quite a bit, but I think it's a pretty open question about who is second, and that's another reason why we should be pretty high in Zalatoris, just because like he is really in a tier of his own. So I think that it's a big question who's number 2 after him. Which golfers' odds have shifted since things opened?
Got two golfers' odds have lengthened a little bit near the top. Mackenzie Hughes from 12 to 14 on FanDuel Sportsbook. Henrik Stenson from 20 to 22. For guys who have shortened, your boy Sam Burns, 18 to 16. Your boy Luke List, 45 to 37. Your boy Johnny Vegas, 60 to 50. My boy, Xinjinjong, 60 to 55. And Bo Hogue and I have a back and forth, so he can be my boy. He's 80 to 65.
That was almost 4 of the 5 golfers from my player picks, because I was very close. I have Vegas. I was very close to going Jong too. But I have Burns, I have List, and I have Vegas. So it was very close.
Chalk Saunas.
What?
Chalk Saunas.
No. I mean, Burns, yes. It appears he will be popular. So
Chalky Studebaker.
What? Studebaker?
You don't know Doug?
No. Like Doug the cartoon?
God.
I'm assuming you're talking about the cartoon, right?
Yeah.
I have not watched that for literal decades.
I'm pretty sure that was the jock's name, Chalky Studebaker.
I don't remember that at all. That show was terrifying because like the villain guy was really scary and I didn't like him. So I didn't watch that show very often. I got easily frightened as a child.
Well, that's your new
Chalky Studebaker.
Is
he the villain?
No, he's the jock, and I'm pretty sure he was like a nice guy with like father issues, but I'm not sure. It's been a while. I think his dad pressured him a lot, but I might just be misremembering. And
in the character drafting sessions, they were like, "Oh, he's going to be a great dude, but he's going to have father issues." Like, I'm glad that they checked those two boxes.
Again, don't quote me on that. Any Doug super fans, but I feel like there was an episode where he was getting pressured and Doug helped him out. But
for the Doug super fans, at Gdula 13, which lower salary golfers have odds to stand out to you?
Kind of a lot. So I think it's important this week to at least name them all. Patrick Rogers is 45-1 at 9,300 on FanDuel. Keith Mitchell, Matt Jones, Graham McDowell are all hovering around 9,000. They're all 50-1. Xinjinjong, Will Gordon are both 55-1, but very different salaries there. Zhang is 95. Will Gordon is 84. Chris Kirk, James Hahn, Seamus Power, Doug Gim, all 65. Power again, 82. Chris Kirk, 85. Kurt Kitayama and Tom Kim, Joo Young Kim, 80-1. Kitayama is 8,100 on FanDuel. Kim, again, minimum salary. So I just feel like he's the only golfer I just named at 80-1. Or shorter with a salary below 8,000. I just feel like he'll be a little more popular than I would like on FanDuel.
Well, we'll see if he's more than 10%. That is the true question here. I think that I tried to talk myself into Rodgers and couldn't do it. Could you? Because I hate that range, and like he is someone who has short odds, but I couldn't talk myself into him.
No, I took a long look when I saw the odds again.
Mm-hmm.
Like the off the tee play again, I have him 7th over the past calendar year, but 102nd in approach, 5th in putting. So I mean, like he's got distance, he's 6th there, but 116th in fairways gained. So if it turns out that distance is really all that matters here, he makes sense. I'm not saying don't play him. I just don't think that I particularly will be.
I am valuing distance, and I still couldn't talk myself into it. So I think, like again, I just don't like that tier. It's just the 9 to 9.6 range is disappointing. I think Xinjinjong at 95 works. Outside of that, it's pretty grim. Weather for this week, I was worried about the potentially being wind, but it does not seem like that'll be an issue. Wind speeds Thursday starting around 5 miles per hour, getting to around 10 in the afternoon, but it'll never get higher than 10. It's a similar story for Friday where the winds start out around 5, wind up around 10. So both waves from a tee time perspective should have similar wind conditions, and the wind won't be a major issue the first 2 days. And the same thing for the weekend. So I would say we can play things pretty straight here, which allows us to dive straight into the player picks. Brandon, let's start things off here in the high salaried range on FanDuel for the Corrales Puntacana. Who are you targeting for this week?
I'm going to go with my boy Will Zalatoris. I think it's just too easy not to go with Zalatoris. I talked with the optimals that you can probably avoid this tier altogether, but I'm smarter than math and history, so I'm going to go with Zalatoris. He's the favorite in this week PGA Tour field. Coming off a 6th at the U.S. Open, led the field in strokes gained approach according to the U.S. Open website. Zalatoris in 2020 led the Korn Ferry Tour in ball striking. I'm probably leaning toward one stud per lineup so that I can go a little more balanced. So if I'm not playing Zalatoris, I'll still probably take a stab at someone close to the top of the salary pool, but really I don't think it's a week where I'm jamming in Zalatoris and another, quote unquote stud.
I might be. because Joo Young Kim allows me to do so. So I will. I'll see about that. But I think that Zalatoris is a guy you just lock in for cash games and forget it. Play based on your process in tournaments. But for me, I think that going overweight is the way that I'll play things. My first high salary golfer outside of Zalatoris is Sam Burns. I don't have a lot of faith in many of these higher salary guys, but I can at least expect that Burns will bomb it, and that's valuable. Burns is 6th in the field in distance and 3rd in strokes gained off the tee. That is in addition to being a good putter. The approach is not great. He's 49th in the field there over the past 50 rounds, but it has been getting better recently. He has gained an approach in 5 of the 8 events since he has played since the end of the COVID layoff. 2 of those were more than 3 strokes gained an approach, including when he gained 3.1 at the Safeway, finished 7th there. So I would say that with there being risk everywhere, I am okay taking a shot at upside. And I think that Burns has that. Now, I'd mention if the fan share tags continue to be as high on Burns as they currently are, I'd be okay abandoning things. But in a vacuum, I think Burns is a good option. Brandon, fan share tags aside, what are your thoughts on Sam Burns?
I like him. He leads the field in strokes gained average over the past calendar year, top 20 off the tee and putting, 12th here a year ago. It's a really just kind of nondescript week for me. I guess before we just move on, should we talk about Corey Connors?
We can. The reason I wasn't particularly drawn is not just the putting, which is, I think, the obvious one.
Yeah.
I'm okay using bad putters. We're going to talk about Luke List in literally like 2 seconds. But it's also adding on that he's not as long off the tee. He's a great driver. But because of that, great driver. But I think because the putting is as worrisome as it is and the distance isn't as long as some other guys, I think I'm okay avoiding. What about you?
It's just tough because, again, I'm not playing multiple studs, I don't think. If I am playing Kim, I would really look at Corey Connors and Will Zalatoris in the same lineup because they are the best of the best. I think Connors is the closest thing that comes to a straight pivot from Zalatoris, and I don't want to just overlook him. So it's more of I'm not getting there because I like him more than Zalatoris or anything like that, and I like Zalatoris way more. But I mean, Corey Connors has played a lot of PGA Tour events. He's second in my win sims. There's no reason he can't be the one who wins this if a favorite wins. So I don't want to overlook it too much and just not mention him. Okay, I think that's fair. Who else do you like in the higher salary range? I have Adam Long, like I said. Played the course twice in the Korn Ferry Tour. Missed the cut in 2016 when he shot a 71.70, but then finished 8th in 2017. 71, 67, 67, 67. Had a hot short game last week, but was still 13th at the U.S. Open. That's not nothing. I think that's it. A good finish at the U.S. Open is something for sure for me. Statistically, he stands out because of that balance. Like I said already, he's 25th in strokes gained tee to green, 12th in putting, and no other golfers top 25 in each of those. So the driving stats are pretty bad, and I'm not overlooking that. But again, I think it's kind of Zalatoris or just bumping down. But Long would be the second place I look. Okay. I think that the distance is the reason that I'm not on Long, just because, like I said, I do value distance. He doesn't have that. And he's okay off the tee, but I kind of want guys who are going to gain, which is why my number 2 play is none other than Luke List. Because if you look at betting odds compared to salaries, even though List is shortened, he's still a terrible process play if that's your process, but there just aren't a ton of guys in this field who can both launch it and be good with their irons, but List can. List is 6th in the field in distance. He is 4th in strokes gained off the tee and 12th in approach. And Will Zalatoris is the only other guy in the field with hyper-relevant data, basically just getting rid of Graham Dillette, who is even in the top 30 in all 3 of those stats. And again, List is in the top 12 for all 3. So we know the putting will not be good, but we saw List win in the Korn Ferry Tour in June. He seems to fit this course well, at least based on what I want. So we're going deep with Luke List.
What are your final thoughts on Luke List here? I know he's not in your range, but what are you thinking?
I don't dislike him. It's just the putting is really uncertain, and you need to score well, and he can do it. I mean, he leads this field in opportunities gained according to Fantasy National, and that's all coming from PGA Tour data. So, I mean, he's getting in birdie opportunities, but 82nd in birdie conversion, which is just the problem for Luke List. I mean, can he win this thing? Yeah, he's
Will
fifth.
he? Yes.
He's fifth for me, sixth in win probability, but
you should bet Luke List. What could go wrong?
I mean, I'll put it this way. I'm much more inclined to bet Luke List to win outright than I am to anchor a whole FanDuel lineup around whether Luke List makes the cut or not.
¿Por qué no los dos? ¿Por qué no los dos? Let's do both. Let's move down to the mid-salary tier. Brandon, who stands out to you between 9 and 10,000 on FanDuel?
Henrik Norlander, 9,700. Trusting the long-term form here. He is 7th in approach, 19th off the tee, ranks 28th in birdie or better rate gained over the past calendar year. Missed the cut at the Safeway when the short game really left him. Had kind of neutral ball striking. But 6 straight cuts made before that, and then missed the cut at the Safeway in the Northern Trust. So if anyone's looking at the past 2 events for him, they're not going to like him, but beyond that, I think there's a lot to like from Norlander.
I agree. Norlander is one of the golfers I would include in liking the upper 9,000 range. He's another guy where, again, the distance isn't there, but despite that, he's still good off the tee. So Norlander is someone I will be using, as will Thomas Dietrich. Another reason why I like this upper 9,000 range. Dietrich, another guy like Zalatoris, we could question the motivation because he did make the cut at the U.S. Open, and it's ain't a major, but he does grade out well beyond that. Dietrich, a bunch of high-end finishes, mostly over on the Euro Tour. He has had runner-ups at the Hero, I guess it's runners-up. Runners-up, maybe?
Runners-up.
Okay, runners-up in the Hero Open at the Celtic Classic. Both those have come since the COVID layoff. Dietrich ranks 5th on the Euro Tour in total strokes gained. He is 15th in approach, 28th in distance. So we'll see how this goes. As I mentioned, Data Golf's World Golf Rankings have him in the top 100, so he does seem to have upside for a good finish here. Brandon, is Dietrich on your radar at $9,900?
Yeah, he's an other for me, right behind Norlander, just for all the reasons you said. Good form against solid fields, and that's kind of all you can really do outside of the very top guys with a lot of PGA Tour data.
All right, so let's talk about the guy I said was kind of the lone person I want to use under like 97-ish, and that's Xinjinjong. He is 95, Brandon. What do you see with him?
So I have Zhang 9th, just from a stats-only perspective. He shot a 74.67 back in 2017. At this course was 5th in 2018. I bet him all the time for top 10s because he's good and he's volatile. Among the field, he's 26th off the tee. And with the putter. He's 12th in birdie or better rate gained. I consider Zhang in much better fields. The salary's not really prohibitive. I think I'm just going to go pretty heavy on Xinjinjong for this week.
I think he's a good play too. I think, like I said, he's kind of the only guy I want to consider below 97 and like above 9,000. So I think that he's the one guy there. So if I have 95, it's Zhang. I think, like I said, Chris Baker would fit there too, but Zhang is my preferred one. I want to talk about Johnny Vegas. He is $9,800. Again, I'm just trying to avoid the low 9,000 range. That's kind of my roster construction creed for this week. Vegas is 98, and I would like to be there when I can. Vegas, a lot of giddy up off the tee, 9th in distance, 1st in strokes gained off the tee the past 50 rounds. He is also 40th in approach. So kind of similar to Sam Burns, where a lot of distance and okay enough with the irons. Vegas is putting not nearly as good as Burns. It's off and on. But the hope for me is that he can do enough with his driving where it doesn't matter too much. Brandon, is Johnny Vegas on your list for this week?
He sure is.
Okay.
It's mainly the long-term form. He was someone who always pops in my win models because the long-term form's good, and his, strokes gained tee to green stuff is good because he's usually gaining strokes off the tee. Don't really bet him as much as like the model says I should. But in a field like this, I think this is when it's right to go after Vegas because, look, a lot of these golfers can miss the cut. Nobody's really safe, and Vegas has a win in his realistic range of outcomes. So
didn't he win at the Puerto Rico Open like a couple years ago or something? So it was one of those weird events, I thought.
I can't keep all those straight anymore.
You talk about your first value play, and I will look up Johnny Vegas's wins. Go ahead.
RBC Canadian Open. Oh yeah, he won that like multiple years. I think 2 years in a row.
Yeah,
but you can keep looking, see if he has more wins. I don't know.
Okay,
I purge wins from my mind because I think they make me want to bet guys. Like Keith Mitchell. He's finished second here in 2018, so he's at least seen the place. Frankly, too good relative to the salary, I think, for this field. Pretty much guaranteed to gain strokes off the tee, similar to Vegas. He's sixth there over the past year. After that, it's a little messier with his stats, but the putting, for as bad as it can be, it can also be very good. And he's eighth in birdie or better rate, so I think he can stick around. And honestly, Mitchell, per salary dollar, might be my second favorite play behind Zalatoris.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you're really on Keith Mitchell.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that makes sense.
It doesn't, for sure.
Yeah, he won. Okay, so sorry, this is way late. But Johnny Vegas won the Bob Hope Classic in 2011, and then the RBC Canadian Open in 2016 and 2017. He was ninth at the Puerto Rico Open like 2 years ago. I don't know why. For some reason, that stood out to me, but it did. So I think that Keith Mitchell is on my list. I also like Sam Ryder in that exact same range. Ryder, crazy inconsistent recently. He has lost at least 4 strokes in approach in 2 of his past 4 events, which ain't great. He's missed 6 of his past 7 cuts. But he has a path to upside, and I value that in a very weird field. Even in this rut that Ryder's been in, he had a pop week at the Workday Charity Open. He gained 4.6 in approach there and 4.6 off the tee. Got a 7th place finish. Overall, when you combine the inconsistency with the good weeks, he is 27th in this field in approach, 46th off the tee. He is 30th in putting in the field. That's a good stats profile, even if it doesn't really show how erratic he has been. So I'd like to avoid Ryder in cash games, but I do like him for tournaments. Brandon, you're more, I think at least historically, yeah, Ben, you're more the Sam Ryder guy than I am. Are you willing to go with him despite the wildness in his current form?
I don't think I have to, even though there's nothing guaranteed. It's difficult just to go with someone who's missing a lot of cuts. I think at a certain point that has to get in your head. Now he has had like good finishes wedged in between there, but I just don't feel like I have to play Sam Ryder. And I don't think I'm going to, especially with Keith Mitchell there. I prefer Matthew Neesmith at the same salary as well. So
really good approach play for Neesmith. So yeah, I think that makes sense too.
Like again, I'm not going to bang the gavel and say don't play Sam Ryder, but I prefer 2 golfers at the same salary. So I think by default, I'm probably not going to be playing much Sam Ryder.
I will be in this range enough, so I will get there for sure. Who else do you like in the low salary range?
Will Gordon, 8,400, 55-1 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook. So pretty short odds for the salary. I think it's warranted. He ranks 4th in strokes gained tee to green, over 30 rounds for him on the PGA Tour of the past year. He's made 3 of 5 cuts since June. Pretty much always gained strokes off the tee. He did 4 at the Wyndham, 6.3 off the tee in another event. So there's value in just being a better driver than your opponent. So I like Gordon.
Yeah, Gordon is someone I looked into a bit when looking for not win picks, but for the value plays. He's on my list too, and I'd be okay using him. Would you prefer Gordon over Seamus Power?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about Joo Young Kim once again. He's minimum salary. Anybody can miss the cut in this field, so whatever. Kim's just 18 years old, so might be getting in on him a bit early. But, despite that age, he's been mopping up on the Australian and Asian tours. We're going to find out a lot about him this week. I'm assuming there's still no shot link data, so we're not going to find out as much as we would necessarily hope. But if using him at 7,000 allows me to avoid that low 9,000 tier and potentially get up to guys like Luke List, in addition to Zalatoris, I find that valuable. So I think that Kim fits from that perspective, just because I desperately want to avoid that low 9,000 range. And he helps me avoid that pretty easily. So Kim is someone I would definitely be using for this week. Brandon, are you going to use any in tournaments or just full fading him?
No, I'll probably get there whenever I feel the need to, and I want to kind of go with a Connor Zalatoris build. But I just want to caution, I know he's exciting. He's kind of unknown, and the betting odds are really great for the salary, but it's not quite there yet, and I don't think you have to play him or anything. So I just assume he's going to be more popular than Jim does.
100% all in. If I have him on 100%, I will be 90% overweight relative to the field. So it's going to be great. Let's do it. Win picks for this weekend at the Corrales Puntacana. Brandon, you won the bobble hat last week. Congrats. We're going to go. Can I lop off Zalatoris, or is that too?
Oh, come on!
Is that too sneaky?
Are you serious?
No, okay, fine.
Like he's 4-1.
Fine. We'll keep Zalatoris. Fine. Pipe down. Calm down. I'm keeping
just
him
for
in.
anybody
No. I'll keep him in.
If you're still tuned in, just know Jim picked Dustin Johnson at the Tour Championship.
We didn't know how to play. I won the bobblehead.
You get to
the victor goes the spoils. The Victor Hovland goes the spoils.
Okay, so it's more fair to take DJ starting 10 under than it is to take Zalatoris at 11-1.
I mean, John Rahm was 8 under. Do we lop off John Rahm? Where do we draw the line?
I'm just saying, man. You
lawyered. No comeback. You burnt. Who you picking?
Zalatoris.
Okay, so you have Zalatoris. We can go anyone 50-1 or longer. The odds did shift. So do you have the odds pulled up right now?
I do.
Okay, so anyone 50-1 or longer, because I thought that he had won the Puerto Rico Open, I'm going to say Johnny Vegas wins this weekend instead. He's 50-1.
You're like a...
I thought I was remembering.
Precog.
I was actually
Precog.
Precog? What?
I have very limited pop culture references, but Minority Report.
The Tom Cruise movie? I've not seen that since I was 10, I don't think.
It's a Philip K. Dick novel.
Okay, I have Johnny Vegas. I'm going to go Sam Burns as my short guy. Who do you want as your long person? I was tempted to go Luke List and just say, give you the middle finger, but
long person.
Yeah,
you said 50.
Yeah.
Then I got to go Keith Mitchell.
Keith Mitchell, 50-1.
I didn't listen to anything you said, so I don't know who your picks are.
I had to think. Vegas and Burns. Leaning into the distance angle. Bomb it and pray. That is my full process for this week at the Corrales Puntacana. Brandon, any final thoughts for you before we mercifully close up shop for today?
Look, again, based on the optimals and based on just what we know about the field, which is pretty limited, and with Zalatoris and a few other really good golfers maybe coming off the U.S. Open, this thing's wide open. So I would say game theory is more important at an event like this than a lot of other events we'll see this year.
Yeah, and it's especially important when you find viable pivots in that same tier. With Zalatoris, you might not have that, but for everyone else, you will have a viable pivot. So check out, if you find projected ownership or popularity, check out that. If you have a fan share subscription, check out that. Try to decide who will be popular this week and make your assessments while factoring that in. That is all the time that we have for today here on the PGA podcast. But as mentioned, our week 2 NFL DFS Recap Podcast has been posted, breaking down the unfortunate injuries across the NFL in week number 2, some undervalued players heading into week number 3, and more. Make sure you check that out by subscribing to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gdula13, GDULA13.
And send all of your Doug hate to Brandon at Gdula13. I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck with your DFS lineups for the Corrales Puntacana. Back again next week for more PGA Tour DFS. Talk to you then. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.